There are places on this planet where human beings were never meant to be. 142 meters below the ocean surface is one of them. No sunlight, no sound, no escape, just pressure. The kind that doesn't just surround you, it owns you. And that's exactly where one man found something that would change his life forever. Something no training could explain, no science could measure. A moment so impossible, it could only be called one thing: a miracle. But before we go deeper into that darkness, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because I want to see just how far these stories travel. Michael Carson was the kind of man most people never think about. 36 years old, a commercial saturation diver, the kind who disappears beneath the ocean for weeks at a time, the kind who lives in steel chambers filled with helium and oxygen, his voice reduced to a thin, distorted echo, the kind who goes down to places where light doesn't exist. 14 years doing that. 14 years trusting machines to keep him alive in a place that would crush him in seconds if they failed. And for 14 years, they never did. Until March, the platform stood alone in the Gulf, 380 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana, a massive structure of steel and concrete, anchored above an endless, dark void. Below it, 142 meters down, a pipeline pumped out 45,000 barrels of oil a day. Everything there ran on pressure and money. Michael had been on that platform for 3 weeks. One more week, and he'd be back on land. Back to Houston. Back to silence. Back to those short, awkward calls with his daughter. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, sweetheart. How was school?" "Good. And your test?" "It was okay." Pause. "I have to go. I love you, Emily." Silence. "Bye, Dad." 3 years since the divorce. 3 years of distance. 3 years of knowing he was losing her, one conversation at a time. Jennifer had said it clearly the day everything ended. "You chose the ocean, Michael. Don't act surprised when your daughter grows up without you." He never argued, because she was right. But down here, none of that mattered. Down here, there was no past, no guilt, no broken relationships, just work, just darkness. And sometimes, that felt easier. At 6:47 a.m. on March 14th, everything changed. A knock on the chamber door. "Carson, we've got a problem." Michael was already awake. He always was. What kind of problem? "Leak in the main pipeline. Expansion joint. Needs immediate inspection." Michael sat up. Across from him, James, 25 years old, first offshore contract, was still asleep. New, unscarred. "When do I go down?" "As soon as possible." A pause. "Production is compromised." That was all it took. Those 3 words. Production compromised. Every hour lost meant hundreds of thousands of dollars. "Give me 15 minutes. Michael dressed in silence. Layer after layer. Thermal suit. Protective gear. Everything designed to fight a world that didn't want him there. James stirred awake. "We diving?" "Yeah." Michael didn't look at him. "Leak inspection." James swallowed. "That's 142 meters, right?" Michael finally met his eyes. "It's just more pressure. You don't feel the difference." A lie. The body always knows. Every cell screams that it doesn't belong there. But James didn't need that truth. Not yet. In the prep area, they crossed paths with Rodriguez. 50 years old. 3 kids back in Texas. Always smiling. No matter how brutal the work got. He made the sign of the cross. Without thinking. Then reached into his pocket. Held something out. A small silver medal. "Our Lady," he said. "My wife makes me carry it. For protection." Michael barely glanced at it. "I've got equipment worth $50,000. That's my protection." Rodriguez smiled gently. Tapped his chest. "The equipment protects your body. This protects what really matters." A pause. Michael shook his head. "Thanks. I'm good." For a moment, disappointment crossed the older man's face. Then it was gone. 7:23 a.m. The diving bell sealed shut. A steel capsule, 3 meters wide. Their only connection to the surface. The crane began lowering them. 40 meters. Systems normal. 70 meters. James gripped the handles tightly, his breathing shallow. "How do you get used to this?" he asked. Michael didn't answer right away. How could he explain that this was easier than facing his own life? "You just do," he said finally. The bell hit the seabed. Soft. Final. 142 meters below the world. 20 atmospheres of pressure. Enough to crush metal. Enough to end a life instantly. The hatch opened. Michael stepped out first. He always did. Darkness swallowed him immediately. The helmet light cut a weak beam. Through black water. Visibility. Maybe 3 meters. Nothing beyond that. Just shadows moving. Where nothing should move. James followed. Jesus, he whispered. Michael didn't respond. He activated his compass. Started forward. The ocean floor wasn't empty. It was littered. Years of forgotten work. Rusted tools. Twisted cables. Broken machinery. Ghosts of men who had been there before. And then, the platform. Massive. Unnatural. Like something built. Where nothing should exist. And there, the leak. Oil drifting upward. In slow, dark spirals. Michael moved closer. Something wasn't right. Control, visual confirmed. A pause. This isn't just a joint failure. The pipe has multiple fractures. Silence. Maintain distance. Keep recording. Michael circled the structure. Camera active. Documenting everything. And then, a sound. Sharp. Metallic. A crack. He felt it first. A vibration through the water. Something shifting. The pipeline moved. Not much, but enough. Michael turned to pull back. And felt it. The line jerked tight. His umbilical. Stuck. He pulled. Nothing. It was trapped. Crushed between metal and concrete. Control, problem. Umbilical caught. Static. Repeat. Position. Silence. The radio was dead. Michael tapped the comm nothing. Then he looked down. And his stomach dropped. The gauge. Falling. That should never happen. Not with a working line. 70%. 65%. 60%. The line wasn't just stuck. It was damaged. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Panic meant faster breathing. Faster breathing meant less time. 55%. 50%. Think. He scanned the darkness. Tools. He needed tools. Something. Anything. To force the pipe loose. His light swept the seabed. Debris everywhere. And then, there. A cluster of old equipment. Maybe 15 meters away. 45%. He moved toward it. The line snapped tight. Stopped him cold. 5 meters. That was all he could reach. Not enough. Not even close. And the numbers kept falling. The tools were too far. 40%. Michael pulled at the umbilical again. Harder. Different angle. Nothing. It was locked in place. Crushed between steel and concrete. Like it had always belonged there. 35%. He reached up. Tried disconnecting from the helmet side. The connector didn't move. Of course it didn't. Safety grade. Built to never come loose. Now, that design was killing him. 30%. Michael forced himself to stop. Breathe. Think. Options. Wait for rescue. But there was no comms. No signal. No way to tell them where he was. How long would it take? 10 minutes? 20? He didn't have that long. Cut the umbilical. Switched to emergency reserve. He reached for the valve. Turned it. Nothing. Turned harder. Still nothing. The valve was stuck. Seized. Completely dead. 25%. No. There was no second option. If he cut the line, he died fast. If he stayed, he died slower. That was it. That was the entire equation. 20%. Michael looked up. 142 meters above him. Somewhere was the surface. But from here, it didn't exist. Just black. Endless. Unreachable. For the first time in 14 years, he understood something clearly. There was no way out. He stopped fighting. The movement, the struggle, the calculations, all of it fell away. He just floated there, suspended, alone. The beam of his helmet light cut through drifting particles, like snow, in a dead world. Emily, her name slipped out of him. Soft, broken, 9 years old, brown hair, her mother's eyes. When was the last time he had truly seen her? Not visited, not spoken to. Seen her 2 months ago, a weekend, the park. She barely looked up from her phone, and when he dropped her off, she didn't even turn around. I love you. He had said it. No answer. 3%. Michael closed his eyes. If anyone's listening. His voice cracked. Anyone at all. I failed. As a father. As a husband. As a man. A pause. But please. Take care of her. Take care of Emily. She deserves more than me. 1%. The regulator coughed. A dry, hollow sound. The last breath. Michael inhaled. And that was it. Then, he saw it. Something in the sand. A glow. Soft. Blue. Impossible. There was no light source. His helmet beam wasn't pointed there, but it was glowing. Real. Close. Just a few meters away. A hallucination. It had to be. But he looked anyway, because there was nothing else left. With the last strength he had, he pulled. The umbilical stretched tight, still holding him, still trapping him. But maybe, just maybe, he could reach. He extended his arm, fingers trembling, straining, almost, a little more. He touched it. Sand. He dug, pushed through layers of sediment. Years. Decades. His hand hit something solid. He pulled. It came free. A statue. Small. Covered in algae. Marine growth clinging to every surface. But unmistakable. A blue mantle. A face. Hands in prayer. The Virgin Mary. Michael didn't think. Didn't question. Didn't analyze. He just held it. And whispered. Please. Click. A sound. Sharp. Mechanical. Impossible. Michael's eyes snapped open. He looked at his wrist. The gauge. 0%. Still 0. But something had changed. The valve. The emergency valve. Had unlocked. Air surged into the regulator. Cold. Violent. Alive. Michael inhaled. Once. Twice. Again. Lungs burning back to life. He coughed. Gasped. Breath after breath. Like drowning in reverse. Impossible. Valves don't fix themselves. Not at that depth. Not under that pressure. Not at the exact second. You need them to. Michael looked down. At the statue. Even beneath the sea growth. The face was intact. Calm. Watching him. He checked the gauge again. Emergency reserve. 15%. Not much. But enough. If he moved. Now. He looked at the umbilical. No time. No strength. He pulled his knife. Cut. The line snapped free. For the first time, he was no longer anchored. Free. Or lost. He looked around. Nothing. No reference points. No direction. Just darkness. Where was the bell? 30 meters? 40? Left? Right? The current had shifted. Everything had shifted. 10%. Michael made a choice. Not based on logic. Not based on training. Instinct. Or something else. He started swimming. Still holding the statue. He couldn't let go. He didn't want to. 8%. Faster. The darkness swallowed everything. No shape. No sound. Just movement. 6%. He adjusted direction slightly. Kept going. Nothing. 5%. His chest tightened. Air thinning again. 4%. Then. Light. Faint. But real. The bell. Michael pushed everything he had left. Arms burning. Vision narrowing. 2%. He reached it. Pulled himself inside. Slammed his fist against the control. The hatch sealed. Air flooded the chamber. Michael collapsed onto the metal floor. Gasping. Shaking. Alive. Still holding the statue. Tight against his chest. Alive. Michael? Jennifer's voice. Soft. Uncertain. I wanted to talk to Emily. A pause. To tell her I love her. His voice started to break. To tell both of you. I'm sorry. For not being the father she deserves. Silence on the other end. Heavy. Real. And to tell you. He continued, struggling to breathe through the words. That when I thought I wasn't going to make it, all I could think about was her. Another pause. Longer this time. Jennifer was crying. He could hear it. And for the first time in years, Michael didn't try to fill the silence. He just let it be. Because some moments don't need words. After the call, Michael sat on the couch. Didn't move. Didn't think. Just sat there. For an hour. Maybe more. Then slowly, his eyes lifted. To the shelf. The statue. Still covered in traces of the ocean. Still carrying that quiet, impossible presence. Thank you, he whispered. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just honestly. For saving me. For giving me another chance. For reminding me that I had something to come back to. 3 weeks later, he was back offshore. Same platform. Same ocean. Same darkness waiting below. Because the work never stopped. It never does. But something had changed. Not in the ocean. In him. He called Emily every 2 days now. Short calls. But different. Real. He told her about the platform. She told him about school. They laughed again. Awkward at first. Then easier. Then natural. Little by little. Something came back. One afternoon. A new diver arrived. 24 years old. First contract. Nervous. You Carson? Michael nodded. I've heard stories about you. What kind of stories? The kid hesitated. About what happened down there. The statue. That it saved you. Michael took a slow sip of coffee, looked out toward the ocean. So, was it a miracle? The question hung there. Simple, but heavier than anything he had faced at 142 meters. Michael thought about it. All of it. The darkness. The silence. The moment he ran out of air. The glow. The statue. The valve. Everything that shouldn't have happened. Everything that did. I don't know, he said finally. Honest. But I'm here. The kid nodded slowly. Yeah. I guess that's what matters. Michael looked back at him. I think so. That night, Rodriguez stopped by. Got a minute? Michael smiled slightly. Always. Rodriguez stepped inside, holding something in his hand. A small cloth pouch. He handed it over. Michael opened it. Inside, a medal. The same one. Our Lady, Rodriguez said. Michael shook his head lightly. I can't. Rodriguez raised a hand. It's not for protection. A pause. It's so you remember. Michael looked at him. Remember what? Rodriguez smiled. That you're not alone down there. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. And Carson? Yeah. I'm glad you made it back. A small pause. From the ocean? And to your daughter. Then he left. Weeks later. Houston. A quiet weekend. Emily came to visit. 13 hours. That was all they had. But this time, it was different. They watched movies. Ate pizza. Talked. Really talked. About school. Friends. Life. And for the first time in a long time, Michael wasn't trying to fix anything. He was just there. At some point, Emily wandered around the apartment, exploring, still getting used to it. Then, she stopped. Dad. Michael turned. She was standing by the shelf, holding the statue. What's this? He walked over slowly. That? I found it at work. At the bottom of the ocean. Emily looked at it closely, turning it in her hands. It's beautiful. She smiled softly, then placed it back. You're keeping it. I am. Why? Michael looked at her. Really looked at her. 9 years old. But already changing. Growing. Becoming someone new. Someone he didn't want to lose again. It's special, he said. Very special. Emily tilted her head. Why? And for a moment, Michael didn't know how to answer. How do you explain? The darkest place on earth? The moment you ran out of air? The second everything ended. And somehow began again. Was it a miracle? Was it coincidence? He didn't have the answer. Maybe he never would. But he knew this. At 142 meters below the surface. In complete darkness. With no one watching. No one listening. No one left to save him. He wasn't alone. And if you made it this far, to the end of Michael's story, do one thing. Write this word in the comments. Oxygen. Because that's what he lost. And that's what he was given back. When everything was already over. And every time I see that word, I'll know one more person understands. That sometimes, hope appears in the last second. In the darkest place. When there is nothing left. Except faith. And maybe, that's exactly when miracles happen.